Well, good day to you. It is October the 25th, and I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs if you're new, and welcome you back if you've been here before. Now, if you want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, you want to know why the Masters and the Teacher are coming back now, perhaps, or even if you want to study a little bit more about the teachings of Maitreya, or look into the many miracle signs that have been going on for decades that I think are evidence of the return of the weighted teacher. If you look in the description portion of every one of these videos are links that take you to websites that talk about this information and give you really good background information in some way. So they're there for you whenever you want to start your investigation. All right. Now, if you want to join the discussion and you don't want to just sit there and listen and not say anything, well, you can post your questions in the comment section too. You can post your comments in there as well. Or if you want to email me at searchforsigns@mail.com, you can do that also. So those are the three options for you, I think, that will get your question to me, your comment to me the best. But Timothy Tilden, Maitreya, Hudson Botley, Peaceful Energy, Zach Laney, and Smoke Doja, you guys all commented and asked questions since the last video I put up, and I want to thank you for that, because if it wasn't for you, I'd have nothing to talk about in this video. So anyway, let's get on into it. Timothy Tilden, you asked a question the other day, and I responded directly to you, and you said, or asked, and I quote, "Do you know anything about an archangel named Constantine?" And I said, no, I do not. But I wanted to talk about archangels. Maybe we can learn a little bit more about the masters even in the process. So first and foremost, I don't want to come across sounding like an authority. I'm just presenting this for you to look at and for you to think about. So Timothy and others, if you believe archangels communicate with people and you watch those videos and you get a lot out of it, I have no problem with that. I'm only presenting this for you to look at and for you to think about, okay? So I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. The second thing is, Tim, I don't know if you were asking this question for this reason. You know, you're not in the room with me, so there's no way for me to know. So don't bite my head off if this is not why you asked me that question, okay? But to truly understand an archangel, you have to break up the word. Arcana and gel. And that's the only way you'll ever understand what an archangel truly is. I'm kidding. No, according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, okay, and from what I understand of the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, I guess, an archangel is a higher master on the devic or angelic evolution. And that's an evolution that runs parallel to humanity. Now, there is a relationship between the two evolutions, but not where archangels give communications to a person that sound all wonderful and great. And I know you can go on YouTube and you can search for archangels, or the Archangel Michael, the Archangel Gabriel, the Archangel Constantine maybe, or whatever, and get a lot of really cool videos and wonderful information coming from these people who claim to receive messages from them. But according to the masters, they do not communicate with humanity in that way. So it's, I would say, best to be very mindful and discerning of the information that you're getting when it comes to things like that. Now, people claim to receive messages from archangels, of course, ascended masters from Maitreya, and even they kick it up a notch, even from the Lord of the World, Sanat Kumara himself, or they say masters from other solar systems like the Palladian or Sirian system, and they receive these wonderful messages from them. According to the masters, they're not receiving anything but messages from either their own subconscious, or at the other end would be a message from a disincarnated entity on the astral planes. And the masters themselves do not communicate to anybody through the astral emotional plane, except for one time. And I have to throw this out as a disclaimer too. According to Ben's master, the Master Jesus gave a set of teachings that they ended up being known as the Course in Miracles. And he gave it out through a disincarnated entity on the astral planes who gave it to a person who channeled it on the physical plane. That was the only time. Now, the masters don't work on the astro-emotional plane because of the problems that occur there. So they would give an information, let's say they gave just a very simple teaching out through the astral planes. Well, then it would get all distorted because of the nature of that plane. So they don't do it that way. Any individual who truly receives information, whether it's a teaching, whether it's a political idea or concept or something like that, to an artistic, version of something, whether it's music or art or painting or sculpture or whatever, coming from one of these masters, is receiving their information from these masters telepathically on the higher mental or lower Buddhic planes. That's it. Never from the emotional planes, because that information would get all twisted and turned up and it would look like a Picasso painting in the end. So They don't communicate like that. So the person has to get their attention up to that level. And a lot of times, and even for people who are very advanced typically and aren't even focused on the astro-emotional planes like the majority of the people, have to still be trained very specifically in order to receive teachings like that, or messages like that, or information like that, whatever it happens to be, so they can receive it clearly. So Benjamin Creme talked about it, where he was receiving training from his master up to 20 hours a day in order to create a very close relationship with his master, to where he could receive messages as clearly as he did. Alice Bailey talked about it, not to the extent that Ben talked about it, but she was even trained. It's even been said that even people like Krishnamurti had to be trained in order to receive messages from Maitreya in that way. Or Jesus himself, back in the day, according to the masters, had to be trained that way too. So it's not anything that just comes to somebody where they wake up one day and boom, they're receiving messages from a master. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't receive, these disciples can't receive a message from a master in, haphazardly, but to receive a true, clear, uncorruptible message from a master, they have to be really, really trained in order to do that. So, the other thing too about the teachings, and this is what's kind of funny in a way, is people like Benjamin Creme, like Alice Bailey especially, who did receive messages and information from these masters and gave it out freely to humanity, right, in their teachings and their books, the people don't respond to it very much because it doesn't seem real to them, because for them, the only reality is the emotional plane, which the masters say is nothing but illusion, nothing but distortion, nothing but unreality, really. And if you look at the New Age movement, if you look at perhaps the religious groups, if you look at even the political groups now, there is such an emotional response to everything that's what's the reality. That even if you don't share that same emotional whatever reaction, you can look at that person and go, you're off your rocker, right? So, but yet to them, it's totally real. So you just have to be careful, I guess. And really, the only way for any one of us truly to stop having the emotions rock our world from backward and frontwards and upwards and downwards the way that it does, because of the problems of the emotional plane, is to truly practice the teachings of Maitreya. Honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, especially detachment. And start the process, and as Krishnamurti would say, be very diligent about it, moment to moment, looking at who is responding to that, who is having that feeling, who is identifying with that emotion or that desire or that, ideology or whatever. And when you do that, you stop being, manipulated by the emotional plane and by your own emotions. And you start to see life as it truly is, from a higher perspective. So hopefully that helps. Now, the relationship that these divas have with humanity is when humanity becomes stressed and out of balance, they become stressed and out of balance. Now, our scientists would not understand this at this time, but eventually they will be taught by these masters and have a greater understanding of the science of the mind, the science of the law of cause and effect, and so forth. But the divas are what build nature and the weather patterns. And when we go out of balance, they go out of balance. And then the storms that would typically be there become even more intensified. In certain parts of the world that are normally arid, then they start to receive a bunch of rain that they shouldn't be getting. It's not normal for them to get. And other areas that are typically very moist and humid and get a lot of rain become very dry and dried up in that way. It's the direct result of the misuse of the free will of humanity. And so they respond to us, we don't respond to them, is, I think, really the nature of our relationship. Because according to the masters, we are the sons of mind. Every single man, woman, and child they consider to be the sons of mind. We progress by the faculty of the mind. The divas are the daughters of feeling. They progress and evolve through experiencing more and more of what's happening now and how that feels, from what I understand. So they're feeling apparatus. So in essence, we're the dog and they're the tail. When we tell it to wag, they wag. When we go out of balance, they go out of balance. When we go into balance, they eventually come into balance, and nature becomes more harmonious and more even keel and not just flying all over the board the way it does. So these masters will eventually teach humanity more and more about how to bring about that balance, our scientists will start to ask them questions about this, and then they will start to see the relationship between the human mind and nature even, and human mind and weather patterns and so forth, and have a better understanding that way. Now, I want to read an article from Benjamin Creme's master. Now, the funny thing is, and Timothy, if you listen to this far, it's kind of funny, is I wasn't planning on answering your question. I was just planning on reading this article. And then after I read this article, I was like, wow, I could actually answer your question and segue right into this. It was kind of funny. So I kind of did it in reverse. But this is entitled The Reordering of Priorities. Now, you might think, what does this have to do with archangels or divas or whatever? Well, this is about bringing humanity and life into balance. What is going to bring it into balance? Well, true justice is balance, according to the masters. And the only way to do that is through the principle of sharing. But what is true justice from the masters? He talks about it in this article. It's when every man, woman, and child has as a right food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education as a universal right. And it will only be brought about through the principle of sharing. But he talks about the destruction of the current systems and the current civilization and the rebuilding of a new civilization based on righteousness and truth as it's predicted in certain religious texts under the inspiration of Maitreya. But it all comes from the principle of sharing. And when we start to share, we start to bring about justice, bring about peace. Well, then we'll start to see our weather patterns become more normalized again. But there's a direct relationship to this. Now, if you also are just hearing these videos for the first time, and you want to know more coming from Benjamin Creme's master, go to the Share International site. Link is in the description. You can read these articles for yourself. I say it every time. It's better for you to read it yourself. You'll get a better understanding of what he's trying to say. You'll also perhaps even see, as I do, this is the best way to truly understand how these masters will be teaching humanity in the future. So until we see them out known for who they are, this is the best way to really understand them, I think. So I encourage everyone to check out reading these articles for yourself. But Reordering the Priorities by Benjamin Creme's master. Such is the pressure under which humanity lives today that only the few can perceive the transformations which daily are occurring on a global scale. A momentum of change has been established which naught can halt or deviate. Thus it is that the world is undergoing regeneration, purification, and pain, preparatory to the creation of an entirely new civilization. The new civilization will be built upon the foundations of the past, but necessarily much of the old must be swept away, corrupt and useless as it is. For those with eyes to see, the new indications are already evident. Wherever men turn their eyes today, a new landscape presents itself. New ideas engage the mind. New structures take tentative shape. A world in flux is transforming itself. The growing pains of change are felt by all. Into this situation has come the Christ, eager to assist men in their hour of need. That he can help there is no doubt. But men must want the changes he will advocate and implement them of their own free will. Naught will be forced and not imposed, for otherwise the law would be infringed. The speed of change will be conditioned by men's capacity to absorb the measures for which an ailing world cries out. Sharing and justice, cooperation and acceptance of the rule of law. Only thus will men find the peace for which the peoples yearn. To aid men in their task, the Christ has formulated certain priorities which, when implemented, will establish balance and order, and so create the harmony on which well-being and peace depend. These priorities are simple and self-evident, yet nowhere do they exist to any great extent. Enumerated, they cover the essential needs of every man, woman, and child. The first priority is an adequate supply of the right food. Secondly, adequate housing and shelter for all. Thirdly, healthcare and education as a universal right. These are the minimum requirements for a stabilized world and will become the main responsibilities of governments everywhere to ensure. Simple as they are, their inauguration will have far-reaching effects and will usher in a new era for this earth. The creation of weapons of war looms large in the priorities of many nations today. From this time forward, these new priorities will take precedence and engage the resources now given over to quote-unquote defense. When this is done, a great creative wave of joy will sweep across the planet, and men in every nation will respond. Cooperation and sharing will become the order of the day, and peoples everywhere will find a new purpose and meaning in their lives. Maitreya will be present to advise and guide, and under his wise direction, the world will be made anew. This time is now at hand. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.